Good afternoon, everybody. I am back again for a type of video I rarely do, but in this case, it's important to do so, and I will say why. Occasionally on this channel, I will review a book that, not only I enjoyed, but I think everybody could learn something from, especially in this case, people on this channel. And it may not seem obvious given the subject of this book, which you can see, but I will explain. So recently, I finally finished listening to Mike Rinder's audiobook, his book, A Billion Years, about his life in Scientology from beginning to essentially present day. Him as, speaking out against the abuses of the Church of Scientology. And this book, not only is it a very interesting read or listen in my case, to hear the account of somebody's decade-long experience in an organization as infamous as Scientology, but it's important to note too that Mike Rinder's kind of a unique case because he was raised in Scientology as a child, so he has experience as a public, and then he joined the Sea Org, which is like their priesthood, and it's a paramilitary-esque organization. And he was actually in the upper echelons and worked side by side with David Miscavage. So the book, details his decades-long journey and how Scientology changed even and essentially got worse from his days on Hubbard's ship, the Apollo, which he was on with the founder, L Ron Hubbard, until his time in the international base as one of Miscavage's main lieutenants. What I found most interesting, just from a point of view of, I find the story of Scientology very interesting, is that Mike details Miscavage's coup in 1986 and how Miscavige took over the church from the people that presumably L Ron Hubbard, the founder, left in charge. And those people aren't really well known. That Pat and Annie Broker. Annie Broker is, unfortunately dead. However, Pat Broker is still alive and has yet to speak out. In my opinion, for someone who finds this whole Scientology story interesting, in my opinion, the person who, if he came forward and told his story, could potentially really bring down David Miscavige is Pat Broker. But he is a ghost. I mean, he's alive, but he's a ghost. Miscavige had him followed by PIs for over 25 years. So clearly little Dave is scared of what Pat knows. But the book, it's very, you can really feel for Mike Rinder in this book too, how you can feel how he is not proud of, and I would presumably say ashamed of, some of the actions he did and things he did to people while in the upper echelons of Scientology. But he goes into great detail and explains very well how one is conditioned to believe those things, especially if one, like in his case, has been in that environment since childhood and, more or less knows nothing else, especially after decades of conditioning. But Mike doesn't deny or make excuses for the things he's done. He's trying to atone for them, and that's something I very much respect. He feels that it is his mission to help get others out of Scientology. In the book, he states, he used to think he was saving the world with Scientology. Now his mission is to save the world from Scientology, particularly his two estranged children from his first wife, all three of which, his ex-wife and his children, are still within Scientology's Sea Org, unfortunately. And I hope Mike gets, the reconciliation with those relationships at some point, although it doesn't look like it's going to come anytime soon based on the responses that I've seen in interviews that his children gave in regards to this book. So it's a very detailed account of various stages of Mike's time in Scientology, how his mind was conditioned over those years, what core beliefs of Scientology are, insight into David Miscavage's leadership that most Scientologists would have no idea of, because Mike was at the international base with him. He was one of his lieutenants. He was the leader of the Office of Special Affairs. That's like their wing of the church that does all the shady stuff and keeps an eye on people and surveils people. So very few people of those echelons of Scientology have had the bravery and integrity to speak out as Mike Rinder has. And on a personal note, when I was considering going to the news with my story of bullying and hazing and looking at stories of people speaking out, there were 3 people whose stories really stood out to me in that time. The first being John Atack, because he spoke out against Scientology back in the 80s. And he was a public member. He was never in the Sea Org, but he was one of the first to speak out of Scientology. So that really stuck out with me, because it's like, oh, here's somebody speaking out against a powerful organization with a big war chest and nobody else is. Because in my case, it's like, who's going to speak out against Arlington County? I know there's abuses going on with other people, but nobody wants to speak out. And Arlington County's powerful. So that was the first one. The second one was Mike Rinder. I've learned his story through meeting John and listening to videos on John Atack's channel. I would also say that those are the best interviews that Mike Rinder gives, the 2 of them sharing stories and going into detail. They're on John's channel, John Atack Family and Friends, and I believe his videos with Mike Rinder are his most viewed videos, but there's a lot of important information on that channel, and even more so in his book Opening Our Minds, which I also reviewed some time ago, which is also on Audible. And like Mike, John narrates it himself, which is always good when an author narrates their own work. The second person, as I said, was Mike Rinder, because it resonated with me, his story, because he was speaking out against a paramilitary organization. The Sea Org is run like a paramilitary organization. The fire service is run like a paramilitary organization as well. And in both his case and mine, there were similarities in that, like, you're basically told bullying, hazing, and abuse is acceptable and to be swept under the rug in those environments. So him coming out against an environment like that really resonated with me. And the third person whose story really stuck out with me was Emilia Clarke, speaking out against the exploitation and abuse she endured while filming season 1 of Game of Thrones as an unknown actor. And that resonated with me because she was speaking out against something that happened to her in her dream job. It's her dream to be an actor. It was mine to be a firefighter. And she was early in her career. I was early in my career. And essentially, from what I saw in her interviews, both her and I thought that we had to endure this abuse to get what we wanted so bad, to get that job that we were so obsessed with, that our identity was so wrapped up in, and thus speaking out against it could potentially ruin that career. However, in my case, and it seems like in hers, that seemed far less important to our sense of integrity and wanting the cycle of abuse to stop so that others didn't have to endure what we did. So those were the 3 main people that helped me decide to go on the news and tell my story in the greater DC area about what I endured as an Arlington County firefighter. That news story, there's some written articles too. I did little videos giving the links to them, but the one that aired, there's a link to it on the channel so you can watch it. And it's not the greatest visual because I had to re-record it because the original link wasn't available to those in Europe and the UK. So by request, I did it that way. And also, Mike Rinder was nice enough to correspond with me via email a couple times back when I was considering speaking out, and gave me some useful advice. So all 3 of those people, John Atack, Mike Rinder, and Emilia Clarke, will always have my respect and admiration. And if I could ever help any of them in any way, all they have to do is ask. And I've informed all of them how they helped me, and they're free to ask any favor of me that's within my power. But the reason why I want to review this book as well is Mike Rinder shows how it's never too late to change, how it's never too late to speak up and to turn the corner. Throughout his book, he essentially at points alluded to the fact that he was resigned to that life in the Sea Org, that there would be nothing else for him, that if he tried to leave or speak out, that his life would be destroyed, that he would lose everything and anyone. And given his longevity within Scientology, and lack of work experience or education, that he would be doomed to a life of poverty and homelessness, that the best he could hope for would be flipping burgers. That's a scare tactic that Scientology uses to keep those within the organizations they continue to be abused. And given that this channel is by and large a narcissistic abuse recovery channel, many of us know that our abusers will use similar tactics to maintain that status quo, to maintain that cycle of abuse, to make you think as if you're doomed if you try to break free and go on your own, that your current situation with the abuser or the abusive organization is the best you can ever hope for, and you're just to suck it up and deal with it, kind of thing. So if you want to hear the story of somebody who overcame decades of abuse, owned up to the abusive acts that they did in the name of that organization, and is now working bravely to try to prevent future abuses of that organization, and is speaking the truth and facing a lot of retaliation for doing so, then I highly recommend Mike Rinder's book, A Billion Years. It's on Audible if you prefer audiobooks. As I said, Mike narrates it himself. Additionally, you can go to another former Scientologist website, Aaron Levin Smith, or Aaron Smith-Levin. I always get it wrong, even though he's from Chester County, same as me. Yeah, I've spoken to him once. But he runs something called the SP Shop, which is a shop of an organization called the Aftermath Foundation, which is there to aid those that are leaving Scientology and need help adjusting back into the real world. They have some pretty cool stuff on the SP Shop, but in addition, they now have signed hardback copies of Mike Rinder's book, A Billion Years, if you are someone who would like to have an autographed copy. Additionally, they have some pretty cool SP bracelets that I need to get one. They are a play on the Scientology clear bracelet, and the Aftermath Foundation is, a really cool, very honorable organization that has a great cause. I hope one day to have an organization myself that helps people recover from narcissistic abuse, from bullying, hazing, workplace violence, retaliation, basically for people whose lives were destroyed by speaking up and speaking out and exposing abuses that they endured or witnessed in a workplace, and the workplace was able to take away the person's career, because I know a little something about that. So thank you for making it to the end. Keep in mind, I will continue to do my regular videos on this channel. If you want a custom video made for you, I recently made a video describing how to get that done. Please check it out. It's the one with me in the white t-shirt. All the details are found within. I highly recommend that you check out John Atac's channel. There's a lot of good videos about bullying, coercive control, a lot of Scientology videos, interviews with Mike Rinder, videos about cults in general and abusive behaviors. John's a very knowledgeable person on this topic. Additionally, check out, Aaron Smith-Levin or Aaron Levin Smith. I'm getting it wrong, and I know I am, but his channel, Growing Up in Scientology, is a wealth of knowledge, as well as is Mark Headley's Blown for Good channel. Please subscribe to him. Help him win the Scientology birthday game. And it's kind of a funny thing they're trying to do for him, and it doesn't cost anything. And last but not least, please like and subscribe to my channel. Click the button for notifications. Please support the channel by getting your own video done, by watching the video where I describe how that is done, or simply, if my current content has helped you, please show your appreciation by sending a tip to the channel via the links found in the About section or via the Super Thanks button. And I thank you for listening to this entire video. And once again, I highly recommend Mike Rinder's book, A Billion Years. It is perhaps the definitive book if anyone is interested in the story of somebody who spent the majority of their life in Scientology, from childhood as a public, to being on the ship with Hubbard, to being in the inner circle of David Miscavage's reign of terror.